Hello viewers, I went on Gran Turismo 7 this week and I found this, a Group 2 race around Spa, a very rare combination in Gran Turismo, but one that would prove to be highly chaotic. Now let's jump in to qualifying. I only did one lap, a 2:05.4, and that put me 11th on the grid for race number 1. And unfortunately, I had to start in the worst possible place because it started on the chicane itself, and I then had to watch as my opponents disappeared off into the distance. It took me maybe a third of a lap to catch that back up and gain my first position, and it was not going to be long before we gained 2 more, as these 2 guys going hammer and tong down into Rivage. We move up into P8. So this is a highly unusual combination, Group 2 cars, so Super GT cars for the most part, around Spa. It's about time it happened really, because it's quite an interesting combo of high downforce cars around a very fast and flowing circuit. As we move up into P7, make that P6 with this poor soul facing the wrong way, facing perpendicular to the racing line, which is not an ideal scenario to find yourself in. Therefore I move up into the coveted P6 with quite a lot of work left to do. But what I did notice was that the top 5, or at least the top 4, were in very close contention for the lead, and therefore they would surely start ruining each other's race, and that's exactly what happened here. Take a look as we go through Eau Rouge and Radion. Not a pretty sight. A couple of cars going sideways up there, and I'm going to take advantage, move up into P5. And as we head to the other end of the Kemmel Straight, unfortunately, this is where my race would unravel. As we head into the Lacombe chicane, that guy gets a bit of oversteer, and I tried to find my way through this melee, and I kind of did, until this moment. And I'm turning right on a straight, and then boom. Before you know it, you have met Exhibit A perpendicular meeting with Barrier. And that's not somewhere you want to be. And unfortunately, as a result of all of that, I'm going to move down into P11. And that's exactly where I started. So all the progress has been undone. But as you can see up ahead, still a very close race. We still have 2.5 laps left to try to gain some positions. And gain some positions I would. Because as I said, this was a very chaotic race, and everyone seemed to be more intent on pushing each other wide than racing. But that's kind of what happens when you have new combinations, new cars around different tracks that you've not really driven before, people learning, getting accustomed to it, and that was certainly the case with this race. Now here we're going to have Exhibit B turning right into a left-hander, and there it is, the poor Frenchman giving us a classic case of doing the wrong thing and driving into the wall. And as a result of his departure from the scene, I've moved up into 8th position for the second time. We're going to try to make our way back up, hopefully into the lead, because that is the idea. But if not, at least the top 5, maybe a podium if all things go very well. But let's take a look. Now, the guy in 6th and 7th, they had a bit of a fight, and that brought them a bit closer to me. I was therefore able to get a move done, and this Italian backing out, probably the most sensible thing I've seen all day, backing out before the inevitable battle through Eau Rouge. So good stuff there. By the end of lap number 3, I was onto the back of this battle, and then there was someone slowing down for a penalty. So I'm back into P6 with a good shot of a podium, I'd say. Even P2 is well within sight. The leader 4 seconds ahead. Might be quite tough to try to win this race, but we're going to try and gain as many positions as we can. Now the one thing I would say about Group 2 cars around Spa is the dirty air factor. Something we all love to hate, and that really does rear its head on this circuit, and therefore driving behind another car does become incredibly difficult, especially through the middle sector. Lots of fast sweeping corners, and here I mean, this section here is rather high speed. Eau Rouge and Radeon easily flat out in a Group 2 car. In a Group 3, it's touch and go, but in this car it's very easy. Here I'm going to pull out of the slipstream, but as you can see, no one's in front of me, so I don't quite get the benefit of that. Therefore, the Spaniard remains in front. So, trying to pick our way through, this isn't going to be as easy as I was hoping. Perhaps not as easy as it was the first time around. Let's see if we can go for a move here down the hill. Looking for it. He actually gives space, to be fair. Not quite alongside enough to complete the manoeuvre, and therefore I have to settle back into P6. So this is proving to be harder than I would have liked. As we head down the hill towards Pouhon, the almighty left-hander, very quick corner this one, get into the apex early. He leaves the space, to be fair to this guy. The space was left on the apex. And we're going to go side by side down into the chicane here. Side by side through the turn. Tiny bit of contact, but I'm able to ride it and take P5. And now I'm really much on the defence to try to preserve the position. Third and fourth just pulling away as a result of that battling. And as we move towards the chicane at the end of the lap, you can see here I wasn't quite close enough to really go for a move. Third and fourth did fight quite a lot, and I was hoping maybe to profit off of that. But it wasn't to be. It was going to be P5, not too bad, from P11. And here are the deaths that happened in that race. So this was the first one we saw. Guy doing a nice little 360 no-scope on map number 1, losing a lot of positions. Here was the French Soul, who decided to face perpendicular to the racing line very early on through Pouhon. And then what was this one? This one was the battle on the beginning of lap number 2. And there was a contact from the guy behind, and this guy does really well to hold that one together and keep facing the correct direction. Now this one, this was my death, as these three going really at it, and unfortunately there, boom, the contact occurs and I'm in the wall. This one is a guy turning right into a left-hander. And then what do we have next? This one was quite a strange penalty. Look, there's contact there. And as we progress on a little bit more, the guy in second is going to get a penalty for that, which was quite outrageous. Having to serve that later on that lap. Going from second down to 7th. For the next race, I put on a new livery, which would surely give me pace. 2:03.6 new qualifying lap. So I've only done 2 laps of practice, but it did put me 6th on the grid for the second race. And I was worried about the car behind. You can use any Group 2 car for this race. Most people using the GTR, but some rogue soul here deciding to go for the Mercedes-Benz. I was quite worried because it's very quick in a straight line, and the lap does start off with quite a few of those. Therefore I'd be surely under pressure at some point here. Hurtling down the hill towards Radeon, Psycho his name is, as you can see. Not an ideal scenario to be in, with someone in a very quick car right behind you. I actually get a good exit off of Radeon, and I'm going to go for the move here on Roman as we head towards the Lacombe chicane. Going to run him narrow, and we're able to get the position up into 5th. Now my job here is to try to pick our way through this battle once again, try to do so as quickly as possible. We're going to switch over to the right hand side past the Spaniard and move up the inside nicely on the brakes, and that's P4. 2 positions already, that's pretty good. And I was quite worried that I'd initially drop down into P7 because of that Mercedes with the great straight line speed. It wasn't to be, managing to go the other way instead, gaining 2 positions. Let's try to follow the Aston Martin liveried car in front through Pouhon, through this very fast, technical, sweeping sector of the circuit. This is where this car really comes alive. High speed corners, lots of downforce, and therefore lots of grip through this part of the track. And settling into P4, this is going to be very much a different type of race because everyone's a bit more settled, much more so compared to the previous race, where everyone was much more intent on wiping each other out. But this one is going to settle down. It's going to become a little bit more tricky. You see it in Formula 1 as well, where lots of cars, they can't quite get close to each other and they're level on pace. and with the dirty air it doesn't help. But the Aston Martin there goes into the back of the guy in second, and as a result gets a poor exit. Lots of carnage in the scene behind, but that's not my immediate worry. That's all behind me now as I move up into P3. Right, here we go then. This was quite an interesting part of the race here, because I wanted to maintain this gap going through Eau Rouge, and see the guy in front was actually slowing down, so I was lifting going into that corner to make sure that we get the run at the right time, which is now, and as you can see, timing that momentum to perfection to get the move done. So I was really conscious of maintaining that gap going into Eau Rouge, and it's worked to perfection. You've seen that quite a lot actually. You see it in Formula 1, drivers backing off or trying to maintain a gap at the right time through the right section of the circuit, and that has worked for me in this instance. Now with a 1.5 second gap to Les Roulants in the lead, we're going to try to reel in that gap as quick as we can to give me the most amount of opportunities to overtake for the race lead. Heading down towards Pouhon, this corner is awesome in this car, really really nice, turning in very late compared to a Group 3 car. As you can see, it just really carries so much speed. The amount of downforce is absolutely ridiculous. Guy in third, not too far behind. We're going to try to make sure we don't drop into the clutches of that guy behind, as this section we're coming up to is quite an important part of the track, I would say. The middle sector is really just about trying to make sure you don't make any mistakes, and then it's this back end of the circuit and then the first sector. This is where the business really happens, I think, on this track, in this type of car. This is where you have the long straights and therefore the better overtaking opportunities. And heading through Blanchimont, easily flat out in this car, not even a problem at all. Braking on, well, just before the 100 board, and you can see here I'm actually going to gain quite a lot of time compared to the leader. In fact, I gain about 0.4 of a second, and that's going to put me on the brim of slipstream range. Fastest lap of the race there, 204.6. 0.4 taken out of the guy in front in the chicane alone, pretty much all on the brakes with a superior line. You can see here 0.8 behind as we leave the La Source hairpin, and by the time we get towards the end of the Kemmel Straight, that gap has come down to 0.6. So we've gained a handy 0.2. So that was a really really important time to gain some time at the end of lap 2, which helped me therefore at the beginning of lap number 3. This is where things though are going to get quite difficult because of the dirty air through this middle sector. It's really really hard. You begin to notice the lack of front end grip, or overall grip you could say, through this sweeping section of the track. We're going to do our best though to try to stay as close as we possibly can. I know that I've got an advantage going into that final chicane, and you know, unless this guy in front works it out quite quickly that there's a lot more time to be gained on the brakes, then I know that I'm going to gain again, and that could set me up for a good overtaking opportunity at the beginning of lap 4. So that's what I'm aiming at right now. Not really gaining much at all, if anything, through this middle sector of lap number 3. In fact, the gap's hovering at 0.8, so if anything I've lost 0.2 compared to about half a lap ago. But let's see then, as we approach the chicane at the end of lap 3, how much time I can gain. Looking for our brake marker boards after 150, but definitely before 100. Heading towards the corner, over the curb, you really do have to carry the speed in, clasp that curb as much as possible, and boom, we are right on this guy. And this guy here knows the battle is on. Look at him. He knows that this is brewing up very nicely indeed. The crowd are going absolutely ballistic at the potential of an incredible battle here. Down the hill side by side, and once again we're going to lift off here just to make sure the gap is the size I want it to be as we reach the top of the hill, and I'm pretty sure it is. Might have left it a little bit late here. Let's see if this guy defends to the right hand side. Indeed they are. We're going to pull out to the left, try to run him quite narrow so that it really forces them to back out, and that's exactly what happens. Boom, we have taken the race lead, and that's gone exactly to plan. And sometimes in motorsport there are those times where you envision things half a lap in front, a lap in front, and it turns out to exactly happen as you imagined it, and that's exactly one of those times. So now it's a case of just trying to pull away and edge out this gap to make sure that the guy behind can't come up for a reply at the final chicane. You really do just want to kill these kind of races dead. You don't want to give them another chance, or at least any hope that they could get a potential re-overtake. So I'm just going to try to do a really good middle section, and that's exactly what happened, finishing a comfortable 1.5 seconds in front. And that was a really satisfying win, a really good race, a really nice combo that. Shame it wasn't maybe 5 laps, but overall, a race that I really, really enjoyed. But before I go, I want to leave you with one piece of advice. Don't turn left into right-handers.